Welcome to Music and Medicine on Monday, a collaboration between the School of Music and the College of Medicine here at the University of Iowa. This podcast is designed to help musicians play and to stay healthy. This production is supplemented by material on the web, our free website called the Iowa Protocols that can be accessed by searching for Music and Medicine on Monday at Iowa. We're coming to you today from the recital hall at the beautiful Voxman School of Music. My name is Harry Hoffman, and I'm a physician at the University of Iowa. And it's my privilege to introduce our guest performer today, Joe Shanks, an undergrad with a double major in electrical engineering and in jazz studies with a focus on guitar with plans to graduate this December. The focus of our session today is on technique and instrumentation to maximize performance and minimize injury for guitar players, with discussion about how to deal with injury once it happens. With us today are Steve Grismore, professor of guitar at the University of Iowa, Jane Brixson, an occupational therapist at the University of Iowa with a strong musical background and a commitment to helping musicians. So before we start with the performance, Joe, can you tell a little about what your inspirations were, where you came from to get to this point, to be planning graduation soon as a performer?
I started initially playing in the church when I was young. That's how I got playing. I was a drummer until 16 or 17, then I started taking the guitar more seriously. My biggest reasons for wanting to play were Julian Lodge is going to be here tomorrow night, and he's the reason I played Telecasters, which are a historically less traditional guitar for this type of music.
I understand that you left drumming for a medical reason, essentially.
Yeah. I got tendonitis or tennis elbow in my right hand from bad technique and overplaying every single day. So the doctor told me to take a break for a little while, and in that time, figured my left hand's fine, so I started playing guitar.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what you plan for the future?
Oh, sure. I would love to just play this thing if I'm able to do that, but I have an electrical engineering degree as well, so I would love to get into the guitar amp design sphere of the world. There's a lot of hubs for that around here that also happen to coincide with really good music scenes.
So we'd like to learn more about your equipment, but before that, if you can offer a performance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe you can tell us what you're going to play and why you chose that.
I'm going to play It Could Happen to You. It's an old standard that I like a lot.
And you had mentioned, was Joe Pass one of your inspirations as well?
Absolutely, yeah. In more of a more traditional approach, which I've stolen many a thing from Joe Pass. I'm sure you have as well.
Terrific. Well, let's hear the performance.
Thank you.
Wow, that was really great. So Steve, do you want to weigh in? We made some...
Yeah, so one of the things to understand, what you just heard was a performance of a chord melody with an improv chorus and then the chord melody on the way out. And one of my goals with all the students here at the University of Iowa would be is by the time they're ready to graduate, as a guitar player, you could do a solo piece like this, or even in a trio setting, but taking the responsibility in much the same way as a piano player, being able to comp, play melody, walk bass lines, do all those things, which really is the most challenging level of guitar playing, is to be able to do all those things, I think, at least in the jazz setting like this. And Joe's done a great job with that, and he came up with his own arrangement. One of the things that Joe could probably do is he kind of reused the things he used in the melody, but he did subtle different things to them, played different chord voicings, placed some things in different places, did some things. But he was still thinking the same set of chords going along when he was soloing as he was when he was doing the melody. And one of the challenges to listen to jazz music too is to understand what is the written part that he performed versus the part that was improvised. And a lot of people, because there are no lyrics, get lost in that. They're unaware that, oh, that was the melody, oh, I see, and this is a solo. That's one of the hardest things, I think, sometimes to get jazz over the hump with certain listeners. It's a challenge. But he did a really nice job,
So are there some features of his playing that you might be concerned that if he keeps doing, he might have some repetitive stress type of injury or some change in the ergonomics?
My comment to that might be something like this, is there could be, the thing about the thumb staying behind the neck more, but he knows to not do that constantly. He's not constantly putting the guitar like this in the flat of his hand. What's funny, the comment I might make to that whole thing is that even though there are probably bad ways to play the instrument, and I have taught certain things that are better for you in the long run, I've also heard people that have terrible technique that just play the crap out of the guitar and sound great and sing and play. So you can criticize all you want, but if you sound good, you sound good. Now, that doesn't mean later on there may not be issues, right? Going to the physical side of this a little bit.
So ergonomics is a term that we throw around a little bit. It's nice to have Merriam-Webster's definition. And they call it an applied science concerned with designing and arranging things people use so that the people and the things interact most efficiently and safely. And with that, Jane, as our occupational therapist with a musical background, can you make some comments about posture and position and things that could be addressed to make sure he's playing when he's...
And I don't mean to pick on you.
Oh, please.
But
It's okay.
So the one thing that I would do is definitely not be crossing your legs.
Really?
Yes. So if you need some support, maybe get a step stool.
I took classical guitar lessons for many semesters many years ago, and I actually have kept that technique. And the idea behind this would be I'd probably be in a higher chair than this, to be honest, because this is pretty low. But the classical guitar, you keep the hand and the fingers like this, and that would help you do that. Part of the reason Joe's crossing his leg is because, to my comment about straps having more something to do, his strap was not helping him enough with his position.
Right.
So he crossed his leg to get the guitar higher to make him more comfortable.
Right.
What he would need to do is to raise the strap a little, and that would solve that problem.
So many classical guitar players will be putting their left foot up, is that correct?
Maybe they would. I forget what I used to do.
There are actually little devices.
Well, you know what they would do is, so let me realign myself here. You would do this.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
I haven't played in many years, and I'm just remembering, it's this leg, and then the guitar, but then you get that angle. You see how this sets on the leg, and then you go like this.
Right.
Yep.
But keeping that technique has always been key. Keeping the thumb behind the neck, tips of the fingers, keeping the hand and the arm in a logical, some people get into this kind of thing, and it's always a trick. Or they overdo this. I had a student the other day that was struggling a little bit in a lesson, and part of the reason, she's not a very big person, but she had a big acoustic guitar. And she kept playing way back behind the sound hole, which doesn't sound as good, right? And so I tried to get her to move her arm up so she played over the sound hole to get a warmer tone. Those kinds of things you pay attention to, but it is a technique.
So playing with your foot elevated limits the number of feet you can choose to tap to keep time. Do you do that to keep time?
I tend to move my foot pretty constantly when I'm playing. Yeah, if you watch any videos of me, I play time all the time with probably my right foot.
And that's maybe not so important when you're playing the entire song all by yourself, but in a band more important?
To me, it's important all the time. Well, if you're playing in time. If you're playing a rubato piece, of course, you don't sit and tap time. You'd be messing with your own brain. It would be weird. But no, when I'm playing even duos, I do a lot of duos where time is important. Yeah.
Okay. Jane, you have some other thoughts?
Keep going.
As far as like do you do warm-ups at all?
I should be better about that.
Yeah.
Pretty specific.
Just because and it would be a warm-up that you would do outside of your guitar on you. Just doing some stretching on your wrists. Okay, doing some of these. You said you have a history of a little bit of tendonitis. So a lot of times you either get like a nerve compression or tendonitis. So tendonitis is the tendons that they connect the muscle to the bone. Okay. So that's where you can get a little bit of pain. But you said that you had a history of this. Yes. So definitely positioning. Okay. You do tend to have a little more of a rounded posture. So just making sure that you're getting good stretches outside of before you get started. So that would really help. As I see, some guitar players, when you bring that left hand up, and you crank on that wrist. Yeah. So one of the nerve compression areas is your median nerve right through here. Okay. And sometimes people will say, yeah, I get a little bit of tingling in my fingers and I don't know what that's coming from. Well, it's when you're doing that full 90-degree flexion at that wrist, you're compressing the ulnar or the median nerve, which comes through that carpal tunnel. So how do you fix that? Well, posture, like you were talking about, bringing that arm up, keeping the forward posture with the right shoulder, this one back, and more of a neutral wrist here. And
so you're aiming for more of a straight? Yeah,
you're aiming for more of a straight, wrist. So there are things that you can do. You can do finger exercises. If you find that do you have any pain or anything when you are playing? If you play for a really long time?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you have?
After a long time, especially louder, more intense groups, my right hand specifically gets very, very tired, or
it does.
Yep. Gets sore in here.
Okay, and in the back of your hand, yeah. So again, that's where like your arm stretches would come in. So straight arm, or wrist down, doing a stretch there. So you're stretching your extensors and you're stretching your flexors on your forearm. Okay.
Is that done before the playing or in midway through?
You could do it both. Okay. I think it's really important to warm up your body, and the more you have good posture, lower body, and you're stable, then you can bring that posture up into your chest area where you can breathe and you can, because you need to be able to breathe when you're playing too. So kind of even pretending like there's a stick running down your back and keeping that. And sometimes people have to have a little something like a little lumbar support or something, if you're having that. So it all comes from your core. So if you have poor posture, if you're not positioning properly and you have arm pain, that's a good reason why. If you have shoulder pain, if you have elbow pain, wrist pain. So, if you would find that, like, let's say you're sleeping at night and you're having the tingling in your hands, well, we know that you're getting that compression a little too much in that median nerve. There's also other compression areas up the arm, the neck. So even doing stretches like with your neck, bringing your neck down, stretching. And so like when you're playing, you play down.
Yes.
You're playing with your neck down. So does your neck get tired?
Yes, absolutely. And my shoulders.
So, yep. And so even rounding those shoulders back, doing some stretches back and forth with your head and your neck, and doing some of that just to prepare for that performance.
There's a lot on YouTube with some healthcare professionals and some that are not, making recommendations about playing healthy.
Right.
One of them that I thought was pretty good discussed posture as important, but not as important as changing your posture. Meaning that if you're frozen into an appropriate position for 4 hours, that may not be as bad as inappropriate positions that you're changing every 15 minutes to keep flexible. Is that?
And even going from sitting to standing.
Yeah.
You know, and then taking those breaks. You have to build yourself up to be able to play for 3 hours. You know, you can't just start at ground zero and then play for 3. You want to build that up. Plus, your fingertips are going to get sore. So I was noting this thumb
This
here.
thumb?
So you kind of hyperextend here at this MCP of the thumb. Okay. So you may find that you're going to start getting some pain because this hyperextends here. So there are things that we can do as therapists to create like little splints or blocks to that joint so that you have a little more of a flexed pattern when you're playing.
And you have some of those splints here, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I brought a few of, we do customize some of the splints. Now I gotta find them here in my bag.
My understanding, some of the splints aren't used when you're playing, but they're used at night.
Yes,
keep your
used
hands
at night, yes.
so that you're not flexing them and causing
So
carpal
this
tunnel.
this would be a carpal tunnel splint, okay? And so this is something that helps relieve the compression if you had that tingling in that median nerve. So that's something that you could wear at night just to relax the nerve, okay? If you're doing a lot of playing and that.
I've seen drummers use those.
While they're playing?
Well, both, yes.
Yeah. I mean, you can get,
They
like
start
this
getting-
one has a metal
helps.
bar in it. You can get the kind that don't, but you wanna make sure that you're supporting that wrist. So you can use splints. This is like a finger, little finger splint that you can wear. We make these to even go on the thumbs. I don't think I'm gonna get that one on my thumb, but
You can custom make them for the individuals.
we can custom make those for you, like in our department.
Okay.
So like this is there's different sizes, but let's say we did that and then try to strum your guitar and see if that changes things a little bit. So it takes a
it does.
little stress off of that joint for you.
It feels very different.
Yeah. So it would
I-
take a little
yeah.
bit to get used to, but it actually now it positions your thumb a little bit better and you're not hyperextending that tendon, those tendons that support that joint and the ligaments. You've got some strong ligaments in that joint that you can have tendonitis in those.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing that we use too is like if you find you have pain in your fingers or your wrists, we use a lot of KT taping.
Oh.
So this is like some KT tape I just brought with me.
KT, what does that stand for?
Kinesio tape.
Kinesio tape,
Okay,
right.
and you can buy this in any kind of medical supply store or a grocery store that has a medical place. But I'll just kind of show you. Sometimes even let's go ahead and take your thumb. And this is something that you could do for your thumb instead of the little splint that we have to support so this isn't hyperextending, is taking some of that tape. And I like this because it's flexible. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start there. I'm gonna pull this around. Okay, and bring this around and give it that flexion pattern. So it's not put on there the best, but now try to strum and see what that feels like. Does that feel different or
It does
supportive?
feel very different, yes.
But supportive,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
if you find that you have thumb pain or finger pain, kinesio tape is one of those things that you can use.
I
And
didn't
sometimes it's
realize.
used as a reminder. Okay, don't bend my wrist.
Yeah.
So we could even put one on your wrist, and that kind of gives you that
Can you
cue.
try that? Just
Yeah,
see
on
if it
the
impairs
wrist, yeah.
the.
So start here, keep that wrist down, and then we're gonna come down into the hand. Okay, like
And that'll
that.
pull up on that.
And
Yeah.
then that's gonna
Oh, yeah.
retract, and that keeps the wrist up, and that's gonna help cue you.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So that probably.
Yep.
Does that impair your playing? Makes you play differently.
Makes me play in a way I'm not used to.
You're
I
not-
don't know if that's necessarily impairing, but
But yeah, I mean,
Proving
like,
some
and you're
habits that I
not
have.
playing 100% of the time with that wrist bent, and that's okay. But for the folks that actually do play that all the
Yes.
time that way,
Yeah.
they're gonna feel that. I had a guitar player in the other day saying his fingers are going numb, and I said, well,
Wow.
how do you hold your guitar? He said, just like that, like with that wrist flexed. So I'm like, okay, well, don't do that, and you got to do this. And so sometimes it just takes
yeah, getting used
getting
to.
used to, but it's not restrictive. It's just kind of a cue.
I can do it if I want to,
Right.
but it just reminds you.
Right.
Steve, have
So-
you had experience with players that have had some difficulties that would
Yeah, I mean,
benefit?
I've know some people that have struggled. Some of the older folks, I've noticed. I have a couple friends. I don't know, it was One Man Johnson or somebody. He's in his 70s, but sometimes the thumb joint becomes weakened, and so
Yes.
doing the things they used to do becomes really problematic.
Yeah.
And when that starts to happen, what happens is people change maybe the guitar they're using or the string gauge. They do things to help make that less problematic within the instrument itself if they can.
And that's a good segue maybe for Joe to talk about his equipment and maybe even the amp, the guitar, and then go on to the strings and how you can adjust a guitar to. Actually, while Joe's getting unencumbered, do you want to describe your guitar, Steve, and how that helps?
Sure. I mean, one of the things, let me just do this, is talking about the differences in guitars, some of the things that affect sometimes the technique or the physical aspects of it is, there are, in the guitar world, electric guitar world, I'm going to start there. I can also talk about acoustic guitars, but maybe what I should do is start with the beginners again and talk about that a little bit, because I've been trying to help Dr. Nelson here with some therapy students who all have to learn how to play guitar, but not all of them are guitar players, so there's some very beginning things. And if a guitar is hard to play, it makes it really hard on beginning guitar players. Sometimes the strings are so high, or the strings are real heavy gauge, or the neck is warped, or the nut is too high, or the saddle's too high. All those things can be adjusted. And a lot of times when you go into a music store and buy a guitar as a beginner, you don't know that. And some guitars can't be adjusted. Your guitar has a truss rod. See this cover in the top? So you can adjust the angle of the neck. Some guitars, if they don't have, you can't adjust a truss rod. If the neck is warped, it's warped. You're done.
This one, actually, you can take the neck off and put shims in to change the angle.
Taylor's are great guitars, so there's a lot of things you can do, and that's my point. So as beginning players, you have to be careful. What starts to happen, though, when we move out of the acoustic realm, the same issues exist for electric guitars, but electric guitars are probably easier to play many times than the acoustic or nylon string guitars for several reasons. Neck and scale length and things like that. Now, the guitars, and this guitar and the guitar, well, actually this is slightly different. The Gibson you see there, the red guitar, that's a Les Paul. Most Gibson guitars are noted for having a shorter scale length, which is the distance from here to here. His guitar from here to here is 25.5 inches. My guitar is 24.75 inches. Now, 3/4 of an inch doesn't sound like much, but if we put the same gauge strings on this guitar and that guitar, those strings will feel harder to play on this guitar. And so that's okay, but that will put more stress on the fingers and if you're bending and doing things like that. And so we also talk about the action, which is the height of the strings to the neck. And you can lower the action to a certain point, but you don't want it so low that it just buzzes all the time. So there's different things. So those are elements that are important. Also, the shape of the necks can be quite different. Like the guitar I have over here, this Gibson Les Paul, that's got a 60s taper neck. It literally says that in the description, rather than a 50s C style neck, which is rounder and bigger. So depending on your hand size, certain guitars are going to feel easier and more comfortable to play. That guitar I love because it's the 60s. I don't have a huge hand, so for me it's great. I can get my hand around it and bend and everything feels good. Although there are so many variations on that. And learning how to deal with, this is an interesting instrument. This is a Benedetto. This was kind of a retirement gift to myself. It's a very nice guitar. What's interesting about this guitar is there was a guitar player named Pat Martino who we lost a couple years ago. He played a Benedetto, and they have a Pat Martino model. He liked to use extremely heavy strings, but because of that, the scale length here is slightly shorter. It's 24.5, not 24 3/4. The idea being that you can place a heavier string on this instrument and still have some playability and flexibility.
And by heavy, are they 11s or 12s?
Yeah, these are actually, I have 11 chromes. He used to play with like 13s on the top, very heavy strings. I can't do that. I had 12s on this for a while and I've switched to the 11s. My other jazz guitar has 11s. I have one guitar with 12s, but rock and roll guitars, what do you, Joe, 10s on this?
10s right now, yep.
Yeah, and that Gibson has 9s. Because for playing rock, I just bend the heck out of it. So there's different things. So guitar players make adjustments to make the instruments playable, both the scale length, the string gauge, the height of the strings, different elements like that.
So Joe's career as an electrical engineer will help him sort through some of this, I think.
One comment, what Jane was talking about, and it's very true of guitar players. I know, I've seen videos of me, and we're guilty. Part of the reason we bend our heads down is because we're looking at the neck.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Now, if you ask Joe to play the piece he just played again and say you can't look at your neck, watch what happens.
Right.
He might screw up a little bit.
Right.
And I say that
Yep.
I'm just kidding, but sometimes knowing where you're at.
So that's where the stretching of the neck and everything would be really important to, make sure that you're stretched out and that you're not going to get that neck pain and strain.
Well, and if you're standing up, he might have a little less of that. When I play jazz guitar, sometimes we do get the leg up and we get right over,
right,
and we're doing this thing.
Yep, right. Yeah.
We see lots of players that play like that, and that's just
piano
you
players
kind of
too.
surround the keyboard or the neck in this
Right.
case, and that's a common thing. Now, it doesn't have to be a problem, but it could turn into one for sure.
If you do it for long periods of time versus short periods of time, just doing the rest, doing the stretches, it all plays a part. So all helps.
Can you describe a little more about what made that beautiful music come out besides your talent, the amplifier and your settings on your guitar?
You're so kind. Like I said before, this is traditionally a country and rock and roll guitar. But what I do is so if I turn my treble all the way up,
Yeah, show them the difference.
played back here and played on this pickup rather than this one, you're gonna get that sort of sound.
Yeah.
Very different. And then if you adjust the amp to match that as well, it'll have even more.
Give us another
Punch.
cool example.
Let's see.
That is cool.
So middle pickup, this guitar doesn't have a third pickup in the middle here, but what it does is it
Switch
blends
halfway,
them.
right?
Yeah, it blends the two. That tends to give you more of an in-between. It has,
Play something
in
funky.
my
Play
opinion,
something funky.
a thin sound that's good for funk. That sort of sound.
All right.
And then today he did something
Yes. So for that, I use the neck pickup, just this guy. This is a single coil pickup, which means also if we blasted this amp, you would hear a constant zzz at, what is it, 60 hertz or
Something like
120?
that. 60 cycle, yeah.
Yeah.
And so what music would you play? Why don't you give us a little example of what you'd use that
So
for?
for what we did today, I would turn the tone about halfway down and have my amp set in a similar
Warm it up a
fashion.
little bit, less treble, a little more bass.
So it gives you this darker.
You're warmer with the neck pickup?
Yes.
But if you do too much of that, you'll get some mud.
Demonstrate, play some chords like that. Demonstrate for Jane your vibrato. Show her what
My
that's.
vibrato?
Yeah, show her how that works. Well, but like just play a chord
Full
and
chord vibrato.
make it move. Yeah.
Is that ergonomically sound?
I mean, if you did that for a long time, your fingers would hurt.
Yeah, I don't do that typically with chords. So it feels unusual. It's an interesting sound, though.
So we've talked about picks before, the jazz picks being smaller and how sometimes they can cause you to lose your fingernail because you're strumming too much with them.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk about ergonomic picks? They do make some picks that are actually labeled ergonomic picks to try to...
Well, I mean, the pick world is just like everything else. There's zillions of them. It's like pedals, it's weird. I brought 2 different picks today. And you know what? I've changed in recent times, although not that much. The bottom line is, so this guitar is set up for jazz and has heavier strings, so I have a pick that's heavier. You can't bend this pick. I mean, maybe a little, but it really resists. And part of the idea behind that is when you're playing, when you want things, you want the string to respond immediately. But when I play rock and roll, I actually have now a little bigger pick than I used to use, and it's a little softer. It's not soft, but it's more bendable. So you can play.
Not injure your finger because it's such a small
And
pick.
it doesn't hit my finger because there's more to it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. This finger still, though, I rarely can keep a fingernail. But I have a weird technique. Joe, do you stick your pick in your finger like this?
When I'm not using it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So we both do a thing. A lot of jazz
This is
players.
different.
So here's what I do. I roll my pick into that finger, and when I play chords, I use these 3 in my thumb.
So that's not true hybrid picking. Hybrid picking would be using the pick and your fingers.
Now
Yeah.
I can't see you using the pick as well. Yeah, right. And you're using the 3 fingers. Oh, nice.
So that I'm using my pick and my fingers.
So
But
when
from my classical days, I have nails on these 2 fingers here, and I actually.
You play with them?
I do. I actually borrow fingernail polish from my wife to keep these. If I have a lot of gigs, I try not to destroy these because they can break, and I try to keep them strong and file them down every other day just to keep them roughly the same. But it's a process.
So when you hold your picks like that, are you getting finger pain if you play for a long time, or that pincer grasp?
It's like this. That's a very classical. You create this thing. No, I don't.
Right. No, you don't.
And how do you hold the pick specifically?
Pretty much like that.
More like this?
Yep, that's like a lateral. We call that a lateral
It's like the
pinch.
first finger goes like this.
Yep.
And then the thumb is like that. So
It's like you're turning the keys in your car.
kind of like that.
It's
Yeah,
a lateral. It's called a lateral pinch.
Yeah.
I tend to
Yep.
play a little more extended out.
You do. Okay.
I don't know
Yep.
if you have
I
opinions on
probably
that.
So-
cheat a little that, but it's close to that. Yeah.
If you find that your fingers fatigue, we also have what we call theraputty. So putty is like something that you can use to strengthen your fingers in those different pinches. So I mean, there's all sorts of fun things that we can use for exercises.
So we talked about our double bass player, our friend Volkan Orhan,
Yep.
and how he actually doesn't practice with the bass the day of a gig because it's so taxing on him to actually play. He doesn't want to waste his energy and his flexibility. And so he'll do some mental preparation, mental exercises. How do you both prepare for a gig? Is it you have some newer material? Will you be practicing up right until the time, or do you try to pace yourself?
Ideally not. There are situations where I've not been as prepared as I should have been and had to do that, but it's definitely not ideal.
Better not to do it the day of, but maybe.
Yeah. Happens occasionally.
It's
but
kind of interesting how that works for people. Like I play in a rock band where we get a set list sent out the day before the gig. And so if there's tunes on there, we're old. If I haven't played that tune in 6 months for some reason, I may go back to it and practice it and work on it just to put it back in my hands, or in my more here. But it's still, it's about knowing the music more than warming up to make sure you can still play, because so much of that is already kind of ingrained in what we do. I do agree with Joe on one sense of that. I don't like to practice too much the day of the gigs. I practiced this morning before I came down here on a couple standards. I was going over It Could Happen to You just if I knew it, my version.
Yep.
I have a gig tonight at 5, but I've already played my guitar a bunch today, so I'm okay. You know what I mean? So it's not a specific practice for that gig. It's just in my hands. I tend to play every day for a couple hours or whatever it might be, but sometimes it's learning new material, and sometimes it's just for fun and practicing and playing. But to my point is that the reason I don't overplay, it has more to do with creativity. You want to be able to, especially jazz and rock or whatever you're doing when you go to play, you know the tunes, but when it goes to the improv side of things, you don't want it all. You can kind of burn yourself out by overplaying. Let me just put it that way. I don't know if that makes sense.
Right, yeah.
But you don't, and kind of to Volkan's concept, you can think about things and do that, but you don't need to overplay. You want to save that creative energy for the performance, I guess. Is that?
So Joe, I saw before you played here today, you were doing some noodling. Was that your warm-up?
In a sense,
So you're
yes.
not necessarily doing what Jane was showing that might be helpful as much as just moving your fingers on the fretboard.
I will start doing that for sure.
That's good.
But no, I've never done stretches much before playing.
And how about cool down? Now, one of the marimba players warms his hand in hot water before he plays and does stretches.
Wow.
And then afterwards he puts them in ice.
Really?
Have you come to that? Haven't been to that step?
That sounds like a fairly drastic situation, like someone's in pain or something's going on there.
Well, he had to quit for a
Arthritis.
year and a half because of overplaying.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never-
Sometimes the arthritis sets in too. So
That's, I've had a cortisone shot here, but so far my hands are hanging in there. Although I did have some issues. My bones, I'm crooked. My fingers are pretty crooked, but they still work. So I'm lucky so far. I haven't had serious arthritis issues in my hands.
Well, that'll be a good transition to the aging guitarist, which will be coming up on.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
yes, but
Yes.
that could be a
Yeah.
thing.
But with that, I think maybe we'll wrap up, say that was a
All right.
fantastic performance.
Good job.
And identify that additional detail regarding this and other episodes of Music and Medicine on Monday can be accessed by visiting the Iowa Protocols, by visiting our website, searching on the web for the Iowa Protocols Music and Medicine on Monday.